Good day, everyone. We are Group 1 and we'll be presenting polymer extrusion. So my name is Neil Bahian and I will be presenting the background. Next slide, please. So for the contents, we will be presenting the overview, the history of extrusion, present-day extrusion, polymer extrusion process, plastics and extrusion, pros and cons of plastic extrusion, and its application. Next slide, please. Polymer extrusion, a process in which metal or other material is forced through a series of dies to create desired shapes. Many ceramics are manufactured by extrusion because the process allows efficient continuous production. In a commercial screw type extruder, a screw auger continuously forces the plastic feed material through an orifice or die, resulting in simple shapes such as cylindrical rods and pipes, rectangular solid and hollow bars, and long plates. In metalworking, extrusion converts a billet of metal into a length of uniform cross-section by forcing the billet through the orifice of a die. Aluminum is easily extruded. Next slide, please. So for the history of extrusion, the first extrusion process for pipe making was patented by Joseph Bramah in 1797. He made pipe out of soft metals forced through a die with the use of hand-driven plunger. Bramah also invented the hydraulic press, used by Thomas Burr in 1820 to make lead pipe. The process was furthered in 1894 when extrusion with copper and brass alloys were used. Next slide, please. So present-day extrusion. Most modern direct or indirect extrusion presses are hydraulically driven, but there are some small mechanical presses still used. Of the hydraulic presses, there are two types: direct drive oil presses and accumulator water drives. For direct drive oil presses are the most common. They are reliable and robust. They can deliver over 35 megapascals. They supply a constant pressure throughout the whole billet. The disadvantage is that they are slow, between 50 and 200 millimeters per second. Accumulator water drives are more expensive and larger than direct drive oil presses, and they lose about 10% of their pressure over the stroke. But they are much faster, up to 380 millimeters per second. Because of this, they are used when extruding steel. They are also used on materials that must be heated to very hot temperatures for safety reasons. Hydrostatic extrusion presses usually use castor oil at pressure up to 1400 megapascals. Castor oil is used because it has good lubricity and high pressure properties. So for our next presenter, here is Vincent De Los Santos.
Uh, Good day, everyone. I'm Vincent De Los Santos, and I'm discussing plastic extrusion process. Next slide, please. So, what is extrusion? Extrusion is a method used to make a object of a fixed cross-sectional profile. Next, please. So, plastic or polymer extrusion. Plastic extrusion or polymer extrusion is a high-volume manufacturing process in which raw plastic is melted and formed into a continuous profile. So this is a fabricating process in which plastic is softened to form it into specific shape. Next, please. So plastic extrusion process. So first is raw materials like granules, pellets, or powder are loaded into a hopper and then fed into a long-heated cylindrical chamber called an extruder. Next slide. It is moved through the chamber by revolving screw. Some extruder can have either one or two revolving screws. Next slide, please. So the raw material flow from the hopper down to the feed throat and into a large spinning screw operating within a horizontal barrel. Next slide, please. Not all materials have the same properties. So the raw material is processed by a heating temperature specific to the type of raw material being passed through. At the end of the long heated chamber, the molten plastic is forced to a small opening called a die to form a shape of the finished product. Next slide, please. As the plastic is extruded from the die, it is fed into a conveyor belt for cooling. Cooling can happen by air or water. So as you can see in the presentation, we use a air to form the product. The process is similar to the injection molding, the process except that the melted plastic is forced to die instead into the mold. So the die for an individual plastic profile is designed so that the plastic flows smoothly and evenly from cylindrical profile of the extruder into the final profile shape. Consistency in this flow is critical to achieving an end product with integrity. So that's all for process. Thank you for listening. And next presenter, please.
So, hi everyone, I'm Rainier Consulta, and my report about is what are the plastics can be used in extrusion process, its pros and cons, and what is the applications of polymer extrusion. Without further ado, let's begin. So, what are the plastics that can be used in extrusion? Number one is the HIPS. HIPS is a rubber modified version of general purpose polyester. The addition of rubber makes the thermoplastic incredibly durable with a much higher impact resistance than its former compound. The next one is the rigid or the RPVC. The RPVC is a unmodified polyvinyl chloride. It's a very rigid thermoplastic. Flexibility can be increased over a wide range by adding vary amounts of several plasticizers such as dovetail and many more. The next one is the flexible vinyl or FPVC. The FPVC is a clear flexible vinyl. It has a broad variety of applications from office products to pool liners, furniture covers, car covers, and many more. So the PE. So PE is the most common plastic in use today. It is a polymer primarily used for packaging, like plastic bags, plastic films, geomembranes, and bottles. The next one is the PP. So polypropylene, it has the lowest density among the commodity plastics. It is used in the automotive industry, consumer goods, and furniture markets. The next one is the PET or PET. It is the most common thermoplastic polymer resin of the polyester family and is used in fiber clothing, containers for liquids, food, and thermoforming for manufacturing. So what are the advantages of plastic extrusion molding? Number one, it has a low cost. Compared to other molding processes, plastic extrusion molding has a low cost and is more efficient. The extrusion process molding uses thermoplastic and they undergo repeatedly melting and hardening. This allows the waste to be reused after rather than be discarded. The raw material and disposal costs are lowered. The plastic extrusion machines operates continually, and this reduces the chances of inventory shortage. Uh, when the machine is taken care of properly, it can allow for a 24-hour manufacturing. So the next is the flexibility. Extrusion molding will provide considerable flexibility in the products being manufactured with a consistent cross-section. As long as the cross-section uh, stays on the same, and the extrusion molding can produce complex shapes, minor alterations to the plastic extrusion, and the manufacturers can use it for plastic sheets or can produce products that mix plastic attributes. The next one is the high production volumes. Uh, the next is efficient melting, and you can mix any or you can mix many types of plastics in extrusion molding. So here are the disadvantages of extrusion molding. Number one is the size variance. Um, Next is the high initial cost. Next is the product limitation, and third is occupies large space. The reason behind that, because it occupies a large space, because the extrusion machine is long for huge companies like producer producers of bags, etc. So as you can see, there are both advantages and disadvantages to using this kind of extrusion. But in response, most of the companies today uh, continue to improve on various elements in order to make it more efficient. So here are the applications of extruded plastics. Number one, the compounded plastics. Okay. Number two, pipe tubing. Number three, window frames. Number four, wire insulation, and many more. So this is a trivia. As you can see here, this is an extrusion machine, and the extrusion machine is also used in the food industry. Here, in the picture here, you can see macaronis are being produced. So that's all. So here's our references. And here's our group question. Number one, give at least two advantages of extrusion molding. Number two, identify. This is a process in which metal or other metal is forced through a series of dies to create desired shapes. Number three, what are the melting points of different polymers? Number four, what are the benefits of plastics in our daily life? Number five, and the last question, what is the very first extrusion pipes is done by who? And that is all for our report. Thank you for listening. Thank you.